This video is going to show you how to put together two different kinds of visual representations, concept maps and flowcharts, and how to use two simple programs to do that. Concept maps are static representations of the relationships between different kinds of concepts, and flowcharts are a bit different. They're a representation of an actual process, but they look very similar, and you can actually use the same programs to make both kinds, and we'll talk about that later. The first half of this video is going to talk about how to put together concept maps with a program called Cmap. This is a free program which has been developed through educational sponsors, and it is specifically designed for concept maps, so it's not very flexible. But what is nice about it is that they currently have certain kinds of online web-based features, as well as a larger program you can download. So it's pretty expansive for what it does, even though it's pretty narrow in its focus. So before we get started on Cmap itself, it's important to know what it is that you're trying to do with concept maps, because Cmap is very strongly oriented toward concept maps, and that's it. So concept maps, they're diagrams that show the relationship between ideas. Why would you want to do that? Well, it helps to make explicit somebody's thoughts about something before they have to put it into an actual argumentative essay. And one thing that is nice is that instead of having one fixed view, you can actually have multiple representations. You can have people comment on different kinds of representations, which can show how different people look at the same kind of relationship between ideas, or how one person's view of the relationship between those ideas change over time. So you can have somebody start an exercise where they make a concept map on day one, and then later on in the semester, they can revise that. Or you can have a small group activity where different people make their own concept maps and then discuss how to incorporate them all together into one larger view, and then maybe see how they have different views. But it's a way of making explicit and transparent a lot of kind of connections that are oftentimes difficult to express in writing. So there are a lot of different online programs for making concept maps. Some of them are freemium, or some of them charge money. But one that's free and usable in an educational framework very easily is something called Cmap. And if you want to try to get started with this in an easy fashion, there's a kind of pared down version of Cmap, which is Cmap Cloud. So if you want to do that, go to your web browser, type in cmapcloud.ihmc.us, create an account. After you create an account on the website, you need to go back to your email you use and confirm that you're using the account. So then go back to the website, cmapcloud.ihmc.us, and log in. Now there, when you join that for the first time, it gives you multiple options. So you may want to revisit those options later. But to start with the Cmap Cloud, choose live collaboration working for the first time. And then you have an option where it says to start building your Cmaps. So if you do start building a Cmap, if you go into that mode, you actually can have multiple maps saved there. On the left side menu, to start a new map, click New Map, and then you're just presented with a blank slate. So once you have that view, you can double-click your pointer anywhere on that blank slate to create a new node, which represents a concept. And then after you create that node, there's a cursor that appears within that bubble, and that's where you type the name for that concept. So then you can create more concepts around it. To connect these concepts, click on one, and you'll be able to drag arrows above it toward another concept. And when you drag, and that line, that arrow is created between the concepts, you can type linking words within that arrow to show the relationship between the concepts. Here I've created for you a representation of a concept map, and this is a meta concept map. It is a concept map about concept maps. And it can show you different kinds of relations and how they are expressed within these arrows. So a concept map is a diagram with nodes. The nodes represent concepts. Concept map is a diagram with linking lines. The linking lines relate pairs of nodes. The linking lines have linking words, and linking words explain relationships between pairs of concepts. So if you want to try to take a look at this and test out the software, you can try recreating this concept map. So now that you've got a concept map put together, you might want to know, well, what can you do with this? Can you reformat it? Can you change things? Can you have different levels of appearance? So things you can do, you can change the size of font, which also changes the size of the concept, so that can show which concepts are the bigger concepts and which ones are the smaller ones. You can add or remove the little points on the ends of the arrows, which might be helpful for saying if you've got like a dual directional concept or something like that. You can also change the font and background color of concept nodes, and you can change the appearance of lines. So you can make the lines dotted or thicker, that sort of thing. And these things can show different kinds of relations to a certain extent. But that's about it. So there's not a lot of variation you can do with this software. It's fairly narrow in its application, and that's what it's designed for. It's extremely useful, though, in putting together these different kinds of concept maps. The next program I'm going to show you is LucidChart, which is designed for making flowcharts, but can also make concept maps. So it has a concept map template. So LucidChart is a bit different from Cmap in that, firsthand, it's not free, it's freemium. So it's got a limited number of features you can use for free, and then you pay for other features. The problem here with LucidChart is that you have a limited number of charts you can make before it starts to charge you. On the other hand, what's really great about LucidChart is the variability in what it can do. And I think it's very useful and something to consider, and it might even be worth paying for a personal account for, depending on how you use it. All right, so once again, I've got a meta representation of what a flowchart is, and this time I'm using a concept map to represent what a flowchart is. So this is a concept map of a flowchart. So a flowchart is a representation of an algorithm, like an iterated process, or of a workflow, or of any kind of process. That's generally what it is. How it's put together is that it's a kind of diagram. It begins with a terminus and ends with a terminus. It branches through decision blocks, and the decision blocks lead to process blocks, and the diagram shows a series of process blocks. So this is a flowchart. What a flowchart is, but it's a concept map of a flowchart because, again, flowcharts, they don't represent relations between concepts, they represent processes. So this is a better way to represent what a flowchart is. I will have another meta flowchart a few slides down. Now, LucidChart is freemium software, so you can start an account for free, but then you can pay for extra features. If you want to get started for free on a trial basis, open your web browser and type in lucidchart.com. You can sign in with your Google account, if you've got a Kenyan-linked Google account, or you can create a new account. So it may be a little bit difficult to start it, but once you get into your LucidChart account, to start a new LucidChart, click on the plus sign that you see. Then you'll have all those different kinds of blocks that we talked about in that flowchart concept mapped in the last slide, and like a terminus and the process blocks, etc. And you can drag those from the left-hand menu. And if you want to name them, you select them and type to name. You add more blocks, and then to connect the blocks, you select one of the blocks, and you'll see there are dots outside it. Drag a dot outside the block toward another block, and it will link them. Well, now that you know the basics of how to put the objects on the screen, it's more difficult to train what's going on next, which is a creative process where you have to think through what you're doing and represent it in a visual way. So what I've done is given you a sample here of one such process. And the process I've decided to represent is a decision process for deciding whether you want to use Cmap or LucidChart. And this is just approximate, but this is what's good. So first question, what do you need it for? Okay, so after you start, question, what do you need it for? If it's a mental exercise, then Cmap. So Cmap is very good for mental exercises. If you need it for a workplace document, probably LucidChart, because especially with all the different formatting options, it's going to be much more useful then. if you haven't really decided between mental exercise, workplace document, you don't really know, you're just testing something out, one question is, how many of these do you need? And if you need a lot of them, you're going to want to use Cmap because it's a free piece of software. But if you only need a few, then you should probably take a look at LucidChart, or you might take a look at LucidChart because the big limitation with it is just the number of charts you can create. The other question is, if you only need a few, does the thing you're making need to look nice? If it does, LucidChart is the way to go. It just makes things that look nice. But if it doesn't, you might want to go back to Cmap, which again is simpler and you can play around with for free indefinitely. So that's a flowchart using these terminus blocks and these process blocks for making decisions. And that can represent different kinds of charts, but that's just to get you started. And if that meta-analysis was a little too strange to follow, here is a simpler chart which explains the differences between Cmap and LucidChart. So Cmap is free, supported by donations. LucidChart is freemium, and you're limited to 10 charts in the free version. Cmap allows for more depth of information. LucidChart allows for a better appearance for presentation. Cmap integrates with free desktop and iPad applications. LucidChart doesn't do that, but it's got lots of pre-made templates for different kinds of uses. And so Cmap is better for thought exercises and assignments, but LucidChart may be best for office documentation and more technical process documents. So hopefully that helps clear up any questions. And if you have any questions about how to use flowcharts or concept maps in the classroom, the Center for Innovative Pedagogy is always interested in working with faculty to help them integrate new forms of technology in the classroom, as well as promote new kinds of activities that help students learn. And you can email us at cip@kenyon.edu. Thank you.